Okay, hello everyone. Let's get started. So today we're going to continue working on the prior practice we started. I don't know if you noticed, I created an instruction here, which I'm like basically that's the steps that we are taking. I just wanted to document it just in case you want to like review it like after class. And maybe like for the other practices, just see like what are the steps I took for developing the project. For Friday, we have like a in-class practice. I'll give you time to work on it, but probably for a good chance, we only have like I can give you about half of the class to work on it. So one thing you can do is like if you have time, you work on it like before class. It's the same practice we worked on, but the difference is that like we worked on for like unit 6. You can find the link like for the unit 6 here. The difference is that we're implementing the same project, but this time object oriented based. So using classes, we want to see like how like it will like be different based on like the same way that we are going for this like practice. Okay. So last session we worked on this practice. We were like creating the tickets. We started by like adding the new class and then developing like the class. So like we started with the class having like the default constructor. This allows you to create and start using an object from the class. If you don't have a constructor, like you cannot add like create an object and like basically set it up for use. So usually like there's like a default constructor with no parameters, okay? So what are the constructors? These are a special type of method. The name of the constructor is the same name as the class name. So the name of the constructor and name of the class are the same. It's a special type of method. It's always like public. The access type is public, but it doesn't have a return type. Okay, it shouldn't have a return type. So this constructor is and like doesn't have any parameters. We'll talk about later when we create like constructors that we specify method like the parameters for them and the reason that we want to implement them. So we added the class fields. We said we're gonna like these are characteristics of that entity. So we added them and we specified them as private because we want them to be like a uniquely like packaged inside that class to be like encapsulated in that package or that class and like only be known by the object itself. And then okay, so we specified them as private. Then we said, okay, now let's think about how we can give access like to these fields, to the data that is stored or it needs to be stored in these fields. So we talked about the class properties. Property again is a special type of method that will be designed for like class fields only for each like the for class fields. It could be like it could have a get side for like getting the value of a field. It could have a set side to set a value to a field, or it could have both of them, like indicating that you can use one property to get the value as well as setting a value to like a field. In the get side, we have the return a statement. In the set side, we say like the field equals value. So the value is just a keyword. And like you see the structure of like properties is pretty much the same for every field. Okay. So then we move forward with okay, adding like the class behavior method. These are like usually like the class like calculation methods that you want to create a string method for like doing a search. This is the type of method. And like you call these methods to perform a particular process. So usually you expect some type of return, whether it's a return is going to be like a value. Let's say you're calculating calculating something. So at the end, you're expecting like the result of the calculation, or you're checking, for example, if something is duplicate. Okay. In that case, then you're like, let's say the search result is going to be like true or false. Or if you're adding or storing, let's say I will create a method that will store information in the database, store the information that is inside the object to be stored in the database. I do that in the method, and then I return just 1 or 0. Why do we need that? Like to make sure that whether that function happened and completed successfully. So we want to say one like yes or no to specify the successful completion or like it wasn't successful. Okay, so we create this method and like add it to the template. One thing you've noticed probably so far, okay, then first we also like added like talked about the class field, calculated. What are the calculated fields? We talked about this like methods, the calculation methods, okay. We talked about the methods that used for calculation. And we said, okay, you have two choices. Either like treat them as local variables, and then like whenever you need that like value, you can pass that information to another method, or you can like specify them as a class field. But in order to like set a value to them, you will use the methods, not the properties. Okay. So I didn't create a property for subtotal. I have a method to calculate subtotal and set the value. But by specifying it and specifying it as a class like field, after you calculate the subtotal, the object will still hold the information because this is a class field. So the object can hold that information and later it can be used for different uses. For example, if you want to like store in a database, you're not going to do that again. Since you already calculated it, like the object already knows it, you can directly save it to the database. There are some benefits and like it's kind of a like something that you can think about what is the best way. I wouldn't like think that like it's something that I would say this is correct and this is wrong. I want to specify what are the benefits of doing that for calculated fields and then think about them in the project and think whether it is necessary to specify them as a class field. And then we are gonna like do that for the other fields. Okay. So if we go back to the same project that we did without like in the past when we were working on methods, like we like collected the inputs and then we created the methods. Okay. So in order to go through the same like calculated process, we said calculating the cost includes calculating the subtotal and then tax amount and like passing the subtotal. So the result of the prior calculation needs to be passed to calculate the tax amount. And then the service the same way, and then we like calculated the total cost. And then we created methods to do like these calculations, okay? So with that, okay, we like created this method and we said, these are our methods, like calculate the subtotal, the tax amount, the service amount, and add the total. Okay, let's go back here. So for now, we created a method for the calculate subtotal. Okay, we also need to like add other like methods to this like template to this class, which is our template for every ticket. So let's see, public, another one, like we also need to add like calculate. Okay, the like calculate tax amount, parentheses, and then brackets. Okay. Here's the thing. Before like just look at it before adding it. So I want to like talk about two versions. Okay, let's say I didn't specify subtotal as a class field. Okay. If I didn't specify this as a like class field and it was like a local field. This is a local field, right? It is identified or like declared inside the method. In order to calculate the tax amount, I will need to know the subtotal to say subtotal times the tax amount. Okay. So I would need for like calculating the tax amount. Okay. I would need to know what is the subtotal. So and also I already have the tax rate. Okay. Do I have the tax rate? Okay. I don't have it. So in this case, since like every we like declare them in the method, but now let's think about this. If you're creating your own classes and you have a constant variable, it's okay to just specify them as class fields. Okay, you're not going to define like a property for them, but you can specify them as a class field. So I will specify specify this. Okay, here is private. Okay, double, and it's a constant. Sorry, const double, and it's the tax rate. Okay, it's the tax rate. I also have another one, which is the service. So it's a constant, again, double service rate. If you remember, like the constant variables should be all like capital case. Okay, service rate, and it is equal to 0.06. Okay. So this is separate. I'm not going to like specify a property for them unless I like there is some important reason for it. This is just like a something that I will use as a calculation. Okay. So now tax amount is subtotal times the tax amount, but subtotal is like a local field. So if I'm going to like calculate this, then I would have to pass that information. When I call it calculate tax amount, I say like have this subtotal and then subtotal times tax amount, okay, tax rate, and then return the tax amount. Okay, so why did I have to, like, I had to pass that subtotal to this method because I needed it in the calculation. And the subtotal was calculated in this method, but it was a local variable. It was a local variable. So next time I'm calling it, I need to pass the information. Or now, let's look at the second version. So I want to show you the both versions and the difference between them. Okay. So one version would be that I will specify the like class field, like calculated fields local. And then whenever I need another like calculated result, I need to specify like pass that information through parameters. The other like approach would be that no, I'm going to like specify this as a class field, okay, and not a local field. If that was the case, then I wouldn't have to like pass that information. Once I calculated it, because it was a field, like the object will still hold that information. And then next time I will use a different method to calculate unneeded. The object can use that information that already exists to calculate it. Okay. And then again, I will instead of like specifying this tax amount as a local, I want to do that the same, like do the same thing. Specify this so that like after calculating it, the object holds that information, holds that state. Maybe I need to pass that information to another method, so I don't have to pass it as a parameter. I can use the information that already exists or stored in the object. Okay, so I hope that you saw the difference between them. The difference is that once some like a field is specified as like a class field, any object you create and then calculate it and store one value in that field, that data will still exist because the object carries its state over time, carries that information until you update it, you change it. So another one, public, this was for calculating the service amount. Okay, so again, for the service amount, I would need to have like another field to store the service amount. So what I will do, I will specify this calculated field as a like a class field here. So I will specify it as a class field service service rate, service amount. Okay. And then, okay, so I specified this as like a class field, and then use that service amount to say service amount is the subtotal multiplied by service rate, and then return service amount. So we define one method to calculate the subtotal, and then a tax amount, a service amount, and also we need one method to calculate the total. Again, public, double, this time like calculate total. Okay. So what is the total? Again, I need another variable to say total equals to like the add. So I will specify it as a calculated, it's a calculated field. I will specify that as a like a class field. Okay, so total. And then here use total to store that service amount plus, let's just start from the beginning, subtotal plus service amount plus tax amount, and then return total. Okay, I can move this, like it doesn't matter, the order does, like it's not important. So let me just add this here so we can see next to each other. Okay. So very important. We don't specify every field that we create as a class field, but only these characteristics, these important things that like their data can be used later, needs to be stored and might be used later. For example, if you want to store, like you calculated like the ticket information, and then you want to store this information in the database, we might also store the total as well. So by specifying as a class field and holding that information, then when you're trying to store that information, you will just use that field and like get the value of total to store it. We'll talk about this next week when we talk, like we actually, like I have the code prepared so we can like read from the database, and then actually like work with like data from an Excel file. So we will connect that code to the Excel file like a database and then use that in the application. So we implemented like these like calculation fields. Now it allows us to like complete that program, one object, okay? One of the like the one example. So we created an object from the class, initialized it, got the values, and now we can like do the process, okay? So this was like the input, getting the input. Now let's perform the process, okay? So double tax amount and ticket, the object calculate the tax amount. And then again, service amount, that dot calculate service amount. Okay, so calculate the subtotal. Here's the thing. Let's finish this and then we can talk about this part. Double total is ticket dot calculate total. Okay. At the end, output, so string output. Okay. So let's say ticket ID. Okay. What's ticket ID? Ticket ticket ID. Okay. I'm using the property designed for ticket ID to get the ticket ID. To get the ticket ID this time. It's the same property that you use to set a value. You can use it to get the value of a field. But the property, not the field itself. The field is private. /n. Okay. So let's design this. /n ticket ID of total. Okay. I'll say the total is okay. Of total /n amount amount /n service amount amount /n total. So depending on like the way that the receipt needs to be designed, for now, I created like a string to display the information about the ticket. Okay. Then we can display that information. So console that write line output. And then also console that read key. Yes. We actually switch this to public. That line. But it works for exactly. That's oh, okay. That's a good point. Let me talk about it. Okay. So here's the thing. We could access the ticket ID because the value of ticket using that property because it's the property. Okay. So here, first of all, the fields are private. In order to access to the fields data, we created properties. But for the calculated fields, we didn't create a property. So we cannot directly access to those values that is stored in these fields. I cannot directly call to use those fields. Let me go back to the program. Okay. So if I, instead of the subtotal, I like ticket dot, if I try to say subtotal, you see it doesn't exist because this is a private field. In order to access that field, either I will call the method to calculate the subtotal, or that's why like here, I specified that to return the result and I store it in that field. I will use that result to like get the subtotal. But the subtotal itself for the object is a private feature. We cannot directly access to a private field. So we can only access to the public ones, either as is a property or it's a method to calculate it. In this case, I already called that method to calculate the subtotal. That's why, and I store it in subtotal. So I will just use that subtotal field to see what is this the result. And then we can try the program. Okay. So first get the inputs. Let's say inception. Okay, character on. Okay, number of tickets 3, ticket ID, get price. Okay. So the ticket ID subtotal, tax amount, service, and total. Okay, based on the way that we like put the calculation, it created this like output. If you expect that like with every ticket comes a particularly designed receipt, okay? With every ticket, when you print out the ticket, there will come, like it comes with a particularly designed output. They will tell you, hey, we want the tickets to look like this. Then instead of like maybe like a better way is to actually add that to the template as well. Every ticket will have, that way you will make sure that every ticket will have the same structure. So I will go back to the ticket class. I will think about like adding one method to this class. Okay, I will add another method, public string. Okay, generate like ticket receipt. I will just use like R. Generate ticket receipt. And I expect I want to like I talk to my clients, whatever. I know that the receipt should have like a particular structure for every receipt. So I add that to the template. And then I will make sure that like that way, like the same structure will be generated for every ticket. Okay. So in this case, do I need to specify this like let's say string output? Okay, because again, the dollar sign. This time, now you were like, okay, so what do we want to store? We want to say like let's say that like the ticket ID. We are using this inside the class, so we access to all the fields here. We don't need any methods, we don't need any properties. We use this like the fields directly. So I'll say ticket ID /n, okay, ticket ID, and then let's say subtotal, okay. Okay, because I'm creating this code inside the class, this time I actually have access to those fields. And this is why I thought it was a good idea to specify the calculated field as a class field as well. So here I can just use the field itself, the subtotal, because I'm coding inside the class. The class like fields are private, but for the class inside the class itself, everything is public. You can access the fields directly. That's why I can use the field itself. Let me just add the dollar here and do the same structure this time here. Subtotal, tax amount. Service amount. Okay. Service amount /n and then total. Then return and out. This time the output is just a local field. I don't need to specify that as a class property. It's not a characteristics of a class. It is just something that we create and like the string and return it. And that's why I didn't specify it as a class field. And every one of these fields is a class field, so I won't need to pass that as a parameter. I won't need to pass the information to generate that string. The object holds the information in the like the field, so it will be able to like create that as string. Now let's go back to the program class. Okay, I'll just leave that like here, but show you the other like version, which is like output equals to ticket. The object that we created dot, okay, generate ticket receipt, and then parentheses. Okay, so that way you make sure that all the tickets will have the same structure. The receipts will have the same structure. And if you want to change the structure, you won't go through every program and check them. You just go to the class itself. and then change the structure of the receipt and say console write line, then upload. Okay, so you see the difference? The difference, if you have a structure that like comes with every ticket, then maybe it's good to add that to the template. Any question? Yes. Exactly. So this one, you're actually kind of like creating this string locally, like in a main method, and like it doesn't come with every ticket. But once you add that like create like this method inside the template, that class, it comes with every object that you create from the class. And then also like the other thing is that like this is like you don't create this type of things for every field. If you have one common, let's say like a message that is regularly produced for a particular reason. Let's say if it's a banking system, there's always like some type of message indicating the successful, like the transaction, that sort of things. Like that's when you create the class, you add the string into the class so that it comes with every object. But here, you're kind of like creating this locally, okay? And this is something that like you can think about other versions to create. And but in that case, you see the difference. The difference is that here the subtotal is local. I needed to call the method. I didn't have access to the field itself. The field itself is specified as private. Okay. This like calculated field is specified as private. I cannot access to this field directly. Either I call the method to calculate it and return the result, or, okay, so either you use that or you already have done it and stored it in a local variable, the result, and then you can use that local variable. Okay, so pay attention to compare these two different methods and see what is the difference between them. One more important thing, I want to talk about it, and I want you to pay very much attention, deep attention here. What you don't see in this class, what do you don't see in this class? Any references to console. There is no console write line, there is no console read line, there is no mention of console. Why does it matter? Because now you've created a class that you will copy this class and you will use it for Android program. You will use it for like iOS program. You will use it for Windows application. You created a code that is separated from user interface. If your user interface is console, you will create an object from this class, same code. After you created the object, then you will use console to get the information and produce the information. If you created a Windows application, you will use the same code instead of console read line, then you will have like text box to get the information. You see, you've separated the user interface from back-end programming. So now that's the beauty of like creating these modules, is that you create like modules that can be used in different environment, in different user interfaces. It's separated. It's no longer dependent on the user interface. But if I added here, okay, if I added like, let's say instead of like return, I would add that console, okay, I would add that console that like write line, okay, whatever, and then print out. I would be able to only use this method only for a console application. If it was tomorrow, I would like use this code for like a Windows application. I wouldn't be able to use the same method. I would have to create another method, this time for Windows application. So when you like separate that user interface from the like back end programming, that's the like comes that like, okay, we can like program like a professional that like, okay, let's separate them. We have multiple layers. There is a user interface layer programming. There is a like a back end programming. This is what you do when you create the program without thinking about which user interface it will be used. It's just about the ticket, regardless of the user interface. When you actually work with the user interface to get the information, produce the information, then that's the other part. This code, the same code, if we were working, if the Windows application was working and we would like try it again, I'd copy the same code, and the only thing I would change was this part. Instead of console write line, I would have text boxes to get the information, and then instead of like the console write line, I would have message box that show, which we worked on before. Because we separated these two from each other, we created one layer. This layer is the user interface layer. Do you get the information, produce information? You get the data. But the class, regardless of the user interface, we're just developing modules. They can be used in any other like user interfaces, okay? That's why when I ask you to create classes, you should remember not to use console in any of the methods. We want to create classes that are like independent from the user interface. Great. Okay. Now, let's assume a lot of times, which we will talk about next week, I already have created like the code, which I'll like share with you, which is like I have an Excel file with the set of information about the movies or a student. We'll read the information from the Excel file, load it up. It's about 100, like 1,000 student information. We're going to load it and work with it, which is actual like implementation of the application. So a lot of times the data already exists, the data is already in the database stored, and you want to load it up on the application, like Canvas. Like you go to registrar's office and like ask it for a registration or any other thing. Like they use an application, they load the information that is in the database to the application and then search for your information. In those cases, you don't want to go through this process of like, hey, let me like set the information one at a time, like for thousands of users, students, and then search for a student. You want to do this very quickly, load the information. So when the information already exists, how do we make sure that the class is ready to perform it when the information already exists? For example, let's say we have an information, okay, the movie, like the title, let's go with this one. The title is like, again, Inception, okay. Director is no one, okay. We have what is it? We have number of tickets. Okay, is 4. Ticket price, let's set to $11. Okay. And the ticket ID 011. Okay, so let's say we already have an information. There are two, like based on the implementation that we have so far, we need to take these steps. Okay, what would be the step? First, you would need to create an object from the class. Okay, so I will create another object from the class ticket, another object, because if I like place that information in the same object, I will lose the other information. Okay, so if you like replace the information in the object, you will lose the prior information. Let's keep that in mind. If you don't care about it, that's totally fine. You can replace it. But if you want to keep the information is still in the object, you will need to create another object. In this case, I want to create a new object, say new ticket, parentheses. So I get the object ready for storing information. Now, how do I store the information? Ticket 1 dot the title. Okay, the property. I created the property. So the title is, I already have the information. Okay, so ticket, and then again, ticket 1 dot director. Number of tickets is 4. And ticket 1 dot ticket price. And then ticket 1 dot ticket ID is 011. Okay,